when was the first time you remember in hip hop, rock, country, punk, whatever the case is, where someone's lyrics were used against them in court?
Well, you know what? I don't recall that didn't happen till like the 90s. But I was involved in a case where a partner of mine shot a guy in Sacramento, and they played the movie Colors in the movie, okay? Because the shooting took place at a viewing of the movie Colors, and the prosecutor was saying that my partner killed homeboy out of retaliation for what happened in the movie, which was some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. But nonetheless, my boy got 25 with an L. He just got home. I was 86, 87. We was touring for Turning Off the Lights because he was supposed to be on the road with us. He chose to stay home that weekend and go to Sacramento. And he went there, shot a guy. He said the story was the guy had saw him earlier that week and had pulled the gun on him. And when they been at the movies, another gun was supposed to have been produced. When my boy messed up he went to the trunk and came back. Okay. And when he left and came back, that's not good. You can't leave. If you can leave, you better. Okay. If you can leave, keep going. And that was pretty much the theory of the court. And if you could have left, if you had time to go to your car, you had time to go to your car and get in and leave. But when you came back, you changed the whole scenario. Plus, they never found the gun that homeboy was supposed to have had. But again, a lot of his family was there, so it is what it is. But that was one of the first cases I've ever experienced where a movie was used to help incriminate somebody that was being prosecuted for a case. I don't recall a lot of the music situation. I know people tried to use Tupac's lyrics at one point in time, but that was way back in the 90s. And they said that gangster rap kind of encouraged people to do certain things, and people were doing things based on being under the influence of gangster rap. But that right there, I was personally involved in, so I can definitely relate to that a lot different.
You were around during the 2 Live Crew censorship era.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to catch 2 Live Crew in a show at their height? And what do you remember about that time when the C. Dolores Tuckers and everybody was on their heads?
No, I never had a chance to hang out with 2 Live Crew. I never went to Florida. I passed through Florida one time, never played Florida. All the years I've been doing shows, never played Florida. Played Atlanta, Mississippi, Georgia, but never played Florida. When I saw that, C. Dolores Tucker had a point at that time. And for the most part, man, a lot of people understood where she was coming from. In fact, my company that I had founded, West Coast Record Distributors, that was kind of the breaking point between Jerry Heller, LA Dream Team, and Egyptian Lover when he took on Eazy E and N.W.A. as clients. We didn't want to have anything to do with that because we understood the possible impact of what was going on. C. Dolores Tucker was leading that brigade, but at some point in time, to my knowledge, Seagrams gave her a big old check and she got real quiet. So that showed you, but then she died shortly. So I don't know the real story, but allegedly she received a check for her support of something or another from Seagrams, which was tied into the distribution of something or another. And the next thing you know, it was over with. And everybody was allowed to flourish from that point on.
Who was responsible for the parental advisory sticker?
Man, I think the stuff Luke them started doing was kind of push that envelope, because at one point in time, when you made gangster records or gangster records or sexually explicit records, you had to have 2 versions. You had to have the street version and then the Walmart version, because Walmart at that time was selling more records than anybody. Walmart was the #1 distributor of records around the country. Okay, and if you wanted to get shelf space in Walmart, you had to have a clean version. But the problem was for the labels, people were making the clean versions, but guess what? Nobody was buying them.
That's it.
Was buying them. So when nobody started buying them, then later on, when Luke went up against, I think it was Disney. I think it was Disney or one of the big companies. Yeah, he went up against Disney, and he went up against the Supreme Court and won that case, but he lost against Disney because up until that time he was Luke Skywalker. So they won the First Amendment case, but he lost the case against Disney because it was copyright infringement because he was using the name Luke Skywalker, and he became Uncle Luke. But from that point on, they took the cap off of all lyrics, and everybody been cussing and fucking ever since. So, you wonder sometimes, man, what would happen if things had been different, Because the stuff that was being done at that time, the stuff that Luke did and the N.W.A, it was not supposed to go mainstream. It was supposed to stay underground.
Right.
Underground was a beautiful market back then, man.
Yeah.
There was no internet, and you could make a lot of money underground because people would actually buy your records and give you money for records and CDs and cassettes. And it just made so much. It was just a much better time. You didn't have to be mainstream to make a nice living back in the day. You didn't have to be. I mean, one of my mentors, Swamp Dogg, who was a blues singer, most people never heard of him. But he lived a very comfortable life in Woodland Hills for years, big house, pool, the whole 9 yards. And all he sold was maybe 20, 30,000 cassettes a year. I mean, CDs a year, did his shows on the other side of the Mason-Dixon line. And that was his life. And because you could get a niche, you didn't need to sell a lot of physical product to make money. Nowadays, you got to go platinum just to get any kind of check.
Yep. Or maybe not even get one.
Yeah.
I guess the Chitlin circuit kept a lot of people paid back in the day, right?
Chitlin circuit was considered the underground.
Explain the Chitlin circuit to people.
The Chitlin circuit was something that Wrecking Crew was a very big part of in its early years. The Chitlin circuit, there's a lot of clubs in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and these clubs might hold, 300 or 400 people, okay? And they were small clubs. LA used to have a nice Chitlin circuit. Doodles was considered a part of the Chitlin circuit. Doodles was a big club on the West Coast, but it was considered to be a part of the Chitlin circuit. And the Chitlin circuit was basically small clubs, independent owners. There was no chains, no chains that I knew of back then, but there was a series of clubs that you can play in different towns and eat and make money. I mean, back then we was getting $1,500 a night, but we was doing 3 or 4 shows a week. So we making $6,000-7,000 a week, and we go from Texas to Louisiana. And Texas is so big, you can play Texas 3 days in a row and be within and stay out of 100 miles of the last gig you played. Okay, or you can go to Texas and Louisiana and come back and play Texas again. It was like that. The down south is so small, and they had a lot of little small venues, dude. And even back then, they had a lot of cottages. We played a lot of cottages and stuff. So all that can be a part of the Chitlin circuit. And that's something that you had the Chitlin circuit, and you had P2 radio stations.
That's right.
Radio stations are labeled as P1, P2s. Power 106, P1. Kiss FM, P1. 99.1 out in
Inland Empire.
Might be a P2. Okay.
Bakersfield.
P2. Okay. So, but because you had P1 stations, P2 stations, you had primary markets, you had secondary markets. LA is a primary market. Bakersfield is a secondary market. San Diego was a secondary market. It became a primary at some point in time, but you can get played on secondary stations a lot easier. But because you're on secondary stations, you also playing those non-primary clubs, which still got primary money. They still pay the same money as the big club, but because you're not competing with major acts, you're working a lot more. And that's why the Chitlin circuit was so appealing to a lot of people. And it's a lot of that right now in the comedy, in comedy, because comedy is lower investment, and you don't need a lot of people to have a good show. A lot of acts to have a good show. And the overhead for doing a comedy show is a lot less than it is to do a concert. So people, it's much easier to open up a comedy club, and that's one of the things comedians survive on right now. It's not really called a chicken circuit no more, but it's smaller markets that you can go in and get yourself $500, you know, 3 or 4 times a month, or 3 or 4 times a week in different spots. That's not a bad paycheck.
Did that name have something to do with back in the day when Black folks weren't allowed to play in big places? I feel like it
had a lot to do with that.
Oh, that's what it was.
When we were not integrated, we did better in a lot of things, and our entertainment was one of those things. We had our own clubs, we had our own restaurants, we had our own gas stations, we had everything because nobody would service us. And you know, they didn't look at black dollars as being green money. They just thought it being black dollars, and sometimes they didn't want the black dollars. Well, black entrepreneurs realized black dollars spend as good as anybody else's money. And then at some point in time, folks started realizing, oh, if we increase the black dollars, we can make more money overall. And because in most cases, keeping it 100, the arenas or the auditoriums or the clubs of the non-black folks were a lot nicer. They had more to offer. I played clubs, man. They didn't have 2 speakers that matched in the whole joint. They got Sir Vega on one side, JBL over here. The mix ain't got no knobs on it. Half the fader is gone. But you walk into the other clubs, man, everything is nice and neat. They treat you a lot different. It's just, you know, but yes, we at one point in time, we were a lot better off entertainment wise, you know, even during the Prohibition, man. That's one of the things I learned from watching last movie. You know, Prohibition kept a lot of people working, and then you know, people kept working after Prohibition, but because it was an underground thing, it was much more controlled and a lot less, I guess maybe not as competitive.
Yeah. Damn, interesting times, man. Let's move on. And if you guys have any questions for the Godfather, post them in the comment section. Thank you to all the people in the comment section. Please hit that like button if you're listening to the sound of my voice. And please hit that notification bell button if you want to get notified when we go live. And lastly, if you're feeling generous, there's a little dollar sign right below the chat. Feel free to drop a few bucks